So, this song, Swami wrote, he said, I want to quote what he wrote because otherwise I'll get it wrong. I wrote this song because my guitar teacher complained to me one day that my songs were too cheerful. Reality, he pointed out with a frown, is sordid. It's grim. It's something to protest and get angry about. Why you haven't even written a blues? So, to please him, he went home, wrote this little piece. As a blues, it's a failure. He said, I'm afraid, hence the title. But he was gracious enough, his teacher was gracious enough to like it. So, just wanted to give you that backstory and see what the non-blues. Let's see what we can do here and have some fun. Try that again. What am I doing? Hanging out in the cellar. Well, it's like this. I'm composing a blues. Now, it ain't the blues, 'cause it's only one. And brother, one's about all I can do. I'm a-hanging my head like I oughta. How's this, have I got the hang of it? My chair is a case of gin, and my mouth I have drooped like a Saint Bernard, till its corners are touching my chin. Well, it ain't, you may ask, why you feeling so blue? Now we gotta get more. You may ask, why you feeling so blue? Well, I ain't. I just thought I should try. 'Cause some fella said all those songs of yours ain't for real. They don't make no one cry. So I thought, let's just find me some cellar. For the only way to feel blue is forget the sun and pretend the world is as dark as a fireplace flue. Oh yeah, that's realism. Love that gutter. Yet I wonder if we ain't been misled. How much reality can a gal see anyway? When she sits all day hanging her head. Now it ain't that I don't know what grief is. This old heart's had its full share. But grief's one thing and complaining another. Why multiply grief with despair? For I find that the whole world around me, like a mirror upon the wall, smiles back when I smile, looks blue when I'm blue, and that blue shade I don't like at all. Well, I'm going back to my bad old haunts. My time here is almost done. I said the fact is, fella, I can't stand this cellar. I just gotta get out in the sun.
Our readings are taken from the Rays of the One Light, the weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Ananda. This week, is God present even there where there is ignorance? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The Gospel of St. John, chapter 1, makes a reference to the divine light that is obscure to the rational faculty, but that enlightens our higher nature. The light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. Reason recoils from this statement with innumerable questions. What is this darkness? Is it conscious that it should comprehend anything? What sort of light would be capable of shining in darkness without transforming at least that part of the darkness in which it shines into light? Does this light shine only at night? And if so, why only then? The solution is that, to divine sight, even daylight seems darkness. The sun itself, like the moon which shines only by reflected light from the sun, is but a kind of reflection of the cosmic light, which, being immaterial, is invisible to the eyes, but which is the great source of all material reality. In Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda describes his youthful visit to Ram Gopal Muzumdar, the sleepless saint, who lived in the vision of that hidden light. Around midnight, Yogananda wrote, Ram Gopal fell into silence, and I lay down in my blankets. Closing my eyes, I saw flashes of lightning. The vast space within me was a chamber of molten light. I opened my eyes and observed the same dazzling radiance. The room became a part of the infinite vault which I beheld with interior vision. Why don't you go to sleep? Sir, how can I sleep in the presence of lightning blazing whether my eyes are shut or open? You are blessed to have this experience. The spiritual radiations are not easily seen. The saint added a few words of affection. This is the light that shineth in darkness. It has been described variously in the great scriptures. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the 11th chapter, the devotee Arjuna is given an experience of the infinite state and exclaims in awe, if there should rise suddenly within the skies sunburst of 1,000 suns, flooding earth with beams undeemed of, then might be that Holy One's majesty and radiance dreamed of. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. My name is Surendra. I'm here with Lorna on my left, Pavani and Vajra front and center, and it's our joy to be with you. Is God there, even where there is ignorance? Well, if he is, he didn't do himself any favors, that's for sure. Human ignorance, the extent of it is a staggering achievement. And as much as I hate to say it, we cannot exclude ourselves from the cause and effect. I find it interesting that Swami combined our reading today with his affirmation for happiness. Seems rather odd, doesn't it? We've all heard that ignorance is bliss, that what you don't know can't hurt you. But what you don't know can hurt you. And there's nothing happy about that. It can even kill you. I'm not much for statistics, but I would be willing to bet that most people who die every year die of some form of ignorance, whether over decades from poor habits or suddenly for something that they didn't see coming. Ignorance is not bliss. It is misery waiting to manifest. It's pain waiting to pounce, and it's delusion waiting to deceive. And you don't have to look far and wide to see the part that ignorance plays in our world today. Not only is it pervasive, it's powerful. Lately it seems that Ignorance is the fuel driving most of our planetary decisions. We may be in ascending Dwapara Yuga, but it's a long way from where we are now to the top of that cosmic cycle. The question in today's reading is whether God is present in the midst of all that ignorance. And it begs a second question. Is he responsible for this? Can we pin this on him? God knows he created us with all kinds of limitations, and we've been pretty good at adding to them ever since, primarily out of ignorance. Einstein said, there are only two things that are infinite: the universe and human stupidity. I trust that God has quite a sense of humor. He would need it to maintain his sanity among us. But there's a purpose to ignorance also. It's what we have to overcome in order to reach that summit of our self-realization. God did not want it to be an easy achievement. When we step onto a spiritual path, the concept of light and darkness takes on a much deeper meaning. Light refers to the way of divine redemption, whereas darkness is whatever would oppose that. We begin to understand that everything we think, say, and do leads us in one direction or the other, toward or away from the light. Think about that for a moment. We make judgments of all kinds of things, the slightest things. It's subconscious for the most part and virtually automatic. We like to think of ourselves as critical thinkers, but a lot of the thoughts, the critical thoughts that we have, are not of a positive nature, nor are they positive in the sense of our spiritual advancement. Hopefully, when this starts to become obvious, we realize that it does not serve us, and we begin to do something about it. Discovering what works and what doesn't is pretty much what this life is all about. But in this morning's reading, Swami wants us to understand that there's more to this topic than meets the eye. In a dark room, you turn on a light and the darkness disappears. But here he's saying that where there is ignorance, the darkness remains even in the presence of it. The light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. In other words, we're eternally bathed in God's divine light. But if we shut it out by favoring our egoic desires and attachments, we wind up in the shadows of that light, where we stumble and we suffer. What can we do about that? Most of the world's darkness, it's out of our control. Wars between nations and tribes, racist attitudes and behaviors, pockets of political oppression, corporate level greed, and so on. What's the best response to these conditions? Is it angry, organized protest? Is God calling us to rally and march against those who are responsible? Or is the message that nothing changes until we do? Ignorance is expressed in countless ways, but its root cause is simply our lack of awareness of who we truly are. In looking beyond ourselves for our happiness, we lose sight of the truth that we are divinely endowed. We develop a case of spiritual amnesia, thinking that we are the body-mind that we have merely borrowed for this incarnation. Our physical and mental capacities are really meant only for overcoming what is keeping us bound to this plane, this earthly plane of delusion, our egoic desires, our emotions, our reactive tendencies that represent our ignorance. Correcting this mistaken identity is not only a challenge for us. There was a time when it was also a challenge, proving to be a challenge for God. There's a wonderful story that I love. You may have heard it before, but I'm going to tell it again. Rumor has it that God was having second thoughts about having created us in the first place. According to anonymous but reliable sources, God became exasperated over man's constant pestering for favors, wanting him to intercede to make life easier. So God did what any smart God would do. He went to his council of advisors and he said, look, I got to get away from these people down there. But I don't know where to hide where they won't find me with all their complaints and their prayers for the many things that they want. Well, there were a number of suggestions made about going to the ends of the earth, but they had to be rejected until one council member had a brilliant idea. He said, why don't you hide inside of people? It'll take them almost forever to find you there. Well, God loved the idea, and that's where he has been ever since. Just waiting for us to realize our divinity, to stop with all the pestering, and to want God alone. Normally, when we speak of light and darkness in a spiritual context, we picture them as battling back and forth. It's sort of like the Super Bowl of Super Bowls for the capture of the soul. But in today's passage, there appears no struggle at all. This darkness is not described as opposing the light. It is simply ignorant of the light's existence. How then do we overcome it? The answer is simple and extremely demanding. To reach the light, we must rise above our ordinary human level of consciousness. That means doing as Arjuna had to do in the Bhagavad Gita, purging ourselves of our myriad mental citizens that represent our worldly desires, our moods, our habits and attachments. All that binds us to delusion and thus to the shadows of God's light instead of the light itself. That light is ever present, but learning to live in attunement with it is no small accomplishment. It's a process, isn't it? We do this one shift of consciousness at a time. And thankfully, there is goodness and grace with every shift that we make. And here's what's remarkable about that. Spiritual progress is not a question about attaining anything. It's simply a matter of opening the door to a state of being within us that already exists, hidden from us only so long as our attention is elsewhere. as that door gradually opens, the soul begins to emerge from the shadows, showing us the way to joy in God. How do we get so turned around in the first place? So steeped in the darkness of ignorance? Well, that's a process too. A process of looking for our happiness beyond ourselves. Anything that keeps us from seeing life objectively obscures the light within us and limits our capacity to receive its blessings. To the extent that we are attached to our worldly likes and dislikes and to the emotions that are triggered as a result, well, to that extent, darkness descends upon our consciousness. God's creation exists on myriad levels of manifestation, all at the same time. Every generation has its extremes. It's Hitler's on one side, it's Gandhi's on the other, it's fools and it's mystics, along with every human possibility in between. But on a higher level altogether is God's divine light, which forever surrounds us, forever dwells within us, is forever accessible, and which cannot be diminished by any gross material reality. We're literally made of it. And yet we continue to suffer. Why? Because we are practiced in the art of misplacing our priorities and in seeking our satisfaction in our egoic desires, which causes that light that shineth within us to be incomprehensible. We just don't seem to know any better until we reach that point of anguishing monotony, as Yogananda called it, and say, enough. I want more by wanting less of what the world itself can give me. I want God and the true abundance that wanting God will bring. We know, and we simply need to remember, that love of God is the answer to everything that we seek. In it and from it is the happiness that does not merely come and go. Love of God turns on the light that dispels the darkness within us. It frees us from being slaves to our emotions. And it lifts us to a plane beyond our worries and doubts, to the calm acceptance of the journey that lies ahead. That journey will include many tests, many of them very difficult, but none of them so difficult that we cannot pass, because God sees to that too. Krishna said to Arjuna, "Be thou a yogi." In other words, realize as the yogi does that all is light, all is love, all is an opportunity to live in joy. We must only remember who we truly are. I'd like to close with a reading that's very appropriate to this topic. It's from Whispers from Eternity, which are prayer demands by Paramahansa Yogananda, and this one is number 179. Make us transparent, that thy light may shine through us unimpeded. The sunbeams of thy love shine equally on all the members of thy cosmic family, whether prophet, hero, villain, or tiny moth, or me. It is our own fault if we make ourselves opaque by our own mental and emotional dullness. Teach us to wipe away the dirt of error from the windows of our understanding. Our arms are weak for the task, owing to our long inner spiritual resistance. O Master Cleanser, lend power to our efforts that we may wipe away every last spot that clings to our minds, obscuring our transparency and preventing free entry into thy light. O make us fully clean again, invisible in our egos, because transmitting only visions of thy beauty, which lies within us. God bless.
So this next song, of course, by Swami Ananda, I chose, they gave me an opportunity to choose the music for today. I chose this because it's one of my favorites. It's got these complex, marvelous chords. The message is subtle, but it's beautiful. So the song is called Memories. So listen for these wonderful chords and enjoy the message. Bring it home with you.